Hello, friends. Today we will begin the topic from the first lecture or from the first chapter. The name of the topic is Barriers to Effective Communication. So, what is the meaning of barrier? Barrier means an obstacle or hindrance. In Marathi, we call it as adthala. So, while communicating, you come across some hindrances, some obstacles. So, you couldn't listen to the speaker properly. So we have to study such type of barriers and how to avoid those barriers. So the first part or first type of the barrier is physical barriers. So internal structure of the organization and layout of office, machines and equipments create physical barriers in communication. Environmental disturbances like traffic noise, sound, and passing train, etc. Then the physical barriers are related with time and distance. Name the personal problems of health, poor hearing due to defective hearing, then poor presentation due to speech defects like stammering, lisping, etc. And then poor verbal skill. Suppose the person is not able to speak the language in which he is giving presentation. So in physical barriers, the first is distance. Communication is found obstructed in long distance, like communication between America and Nepal. So there is a distance barrier. Suppose I am speaking, but the person who is listening to me is far away than my speaking capacity. Then he could not listen to me properly. Next is noise. It is form of external sources and affects the communication process. Noise negatively affects the accuracy. Suppose I am speaking and lots of noise is outside my classroom, then my students will not listen to me properly. Then physical arrangement. The physical arrangement of the organizational sources like men, money, material, and machine obstruct the communication process. The next type is semantic barriers. The word semantic is related with language. The use of difficult and multiple uses of language, words, figures, and symbols create semantic barriers. Most of the difficulties in communication arise because of the same word or symbol means different things to different individuals. The first type of semantic barrier is language barrier. We can find some words having different meanings, as meaning sent by the sender can be quite different from the meaning understood by the receiver. Long and complex sentences create problem in communication process. Then the next type is jargon. Technical or unfamiliar language creates barriers to communication that may be drawn from the literature. So, messages should be simple and condensed as far as possible so that no confusion creation will be there to the receiver. So, jargon is related to the typical or specific language of the literature. So, the simple person could not understand that language. The next type is organizational barriers. It is raised from the organizational goals, regulations, structure, and culture. The first type in organizational barrier is poor planning. It refers to the designing, encoding, channel selection, and conflicting signals in the organization. Then, structure complexities. Difficult organizational structure, barrier for free flow of information, appropriate communication process must be used. Then the next barrier in the organizational barriers is status differences. It creates barrier for communication. Superior provides information to the subordinate about plans and policies. Different information is provided by different subordinates who create barrier in the communication. Then organizational distance. Distance between sender and receiver also creates barrier to the effective communication. Then information overload. If superior provides too much information to the subordinate in short period, receiver suffers from information overload, which creates barrier to effective communication. Then timing. Communication can be obstructed if not done on time. If the information is not provided in time, it creates barriers to effective communication. Then the next type of barriers is psychological barriers. What is the meaning of psychology? Psychology, the word psychology is related to our mind. So these barriers are present in our mind. It is the barrier to effective communication created from the lack of interest of the people from whom the communication is meant. People do not pay attention to the communication which are not interesting to them and which do not fulfill their want. So, the types in psychological barriers are: first, perception. It is the process of accepting and interpreting the information by the receiver. People receive things differently for a various number of reasons. So, this is the perception, what people understand from the message. Then, filtering. Communication sometimes filters the negative information to make it more favorable to the receiver. In this process, knowingly or unknowingly, some valuable information may be disposed. Then, emotions. Emotion also creates barriers to the effective communication like anger, hate, mistrust, jealousy, etc. Then, viewpoint. It also creates barriers to effective communication. It The receiver doesn't clear the message and ignores without hearing. The message may create obstructions. And the last is defensiveness. If the receiver receives the message as threat and interprets that message in the same way, it creates barrier to effective communication. Then the next type is mechanical barriers. Mechanical barriers are related to machines. Mechanical communication barriers are technical sources of interference in the communication process. Mechanical barriers, we will see mechanical barriers in the next lecture.